Hey everyone, excited to be back for this week's edition of Frequently Asked Questions for Commercial Real Estate. In today's video, what I want to do is talk about something that is extremely prevalent within commercial real estate brokerage, and that is what is tenant representation. So you may be looking to get into the commercial real estate space and you've approached different brokerages, and maybe there's an opportunity to be a tenant rep at a particular brokerage, and you may be wondering what exactly that means. So in today's video, we're going to explain what that is, and then some of the things you need to do as you're going through the process of representing a tenant to help them place them in a commercial space. So before we dive into this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you can like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can hear this message and learn about the many facets of commercial real estate. So now you've done that, go ahead and like and subscribe below. Let's go ahead and dive right into this episode. All right, so the question is, what exactly is tenant representation? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like, right? You represent the best interests of the tenant in the transaction. And so you could be working with a coffee shop to help place them in a 1,200 square foot retail space, or you can be representing a law firm and placing them in a 5,000 square foot office space. But really, it's representing the tenant's best interests when you're going into a transaction. Now, depending on which brokerage you operate in, you may be only doing tenant representation, meaning that you're only going to be working with a particular type of tenant and helping them place them in a space. And a lot of times this happens in, an office setting where you're only representing office clients and placing them or helping them lease space within office buildings. Or maybe you're working in the medical space and you're helping physicians do the same thing. But typically those larger brokerages where there's only the tenant representation arm, that would be something that you would only be operating in that capacity. Now, as a in the boutique brokerage that I'm in, I can operate in a variety of different ways. So I'm not just pigeonholed into tenant representation, although I do represent tenants for a variety of different purposes, primarily on the retail side, to acquire or lease space within retail centers. So that's typically how it's structured in that front. Now, when you're working with clients, obviously there's different levels of sophistication when it comes to the clients you will be working with. If they're a startup client, you're probably going to have to handhold them a little bit more as far as educating them about the process and making sure they have all their ducks in a row. Whereas if you're working with a large corporate client, they may be executing these transactions on a regular basis. Therefore, it's going to be a lot more seamless of a transaction as it pertains to not having to explain every little facets of the transaction and how it works. And so, typically if you're working with larger corporate clients, the transactions typically going to be a little bit more seamless as far as the education piece is concerned, but then there's other factors that come into play that you need to consider. So what you typically need to do when you're dealing in a tenant representation environment is to set the foundation right off the bat so you can hit the ground running and find a space that's going to fit their needs as best as possible. Now, the first thing I typically like to do when I start working with tenants is if they are not necessarily a known commodity, so if they're not a large corporate client, a lot of times I'll ask them if they could provide some financial documents, because that's a question that's going to come up, that the landlord's going to want to see some financials, especially if they're a startup. They're going to want to see that they have a business plan and some personal financial statement or some other financial proof that they can actually execute on the terms of the lease. So I'll usually gather that information on the front end so that we can really just hit the ground running and we can address any issues prior to actually going and hitting the pavement to try to find a location. So that's number one. Number two is we start gathering requirements. So you'll get the size requirement. You'll figure out what their budget is, and you'll find out what location they want to be in. And as we've talked about in previous videos, a location that's optimal for one tenant may not be an optimal location for another tenant. In a retail setting, you want to be in a high traffic area with great visibility and accessibility, whereas with industrial tenants, you may want to be in an industrial park that has easy access to major arteries like highways and airports, and maybe even rail if you do transport via that method as well. So again, getting very clear understanding of what's most important to the tenant is this part of the puzzle. So at that point, once you gather all that information, you'll start executing searches for your tenants. Typically, this is either through your local commercial listing services. Our local commercial listing service is called KCREA, so you could execute searches on there and get them on drip campaigns. There could be outreach efforts. I send out mailers and contact property owners to get a feel for whether or not there's a lease coming up, or they're interested in leasing a particular building that they own. So those are some of the outreach efforts that we perform in order to make sure that our clients get the best possible location. So that's number two. So once you find a space that your client is interested in pursuing, that's when you enter into the negotiation phase. And really, you have to get a very clear understanding of the market dynamics. So in a situation where you maybe have more leverage because you have a strong corporate client, and maybe the market for that particular property type is suppressed. Right now, depending on where you're located in the city, if you're looking to go downtown, for example, and for an office space here in Louisville, you have a lot more leverage if you have a client that is financially solvent and sound enough to be able to execute on that lease. So you understand your negotiating power. Therefore, when you go into the negotiations, you can ask for more than what you would typically be able to find in maybe like an industrial setting. Whereas, our industrial market is booming as it is across the nation. So, the concessions that landlords are willing to give is not nearly as much as you would find in other property types. So again, educating your client about what's out there and some of the things we can and can't negotiate for is part of the process as far as negotiating the best deal for your space. And then finally, you put them in contact with great partners. I have a list of contacts that I've worked with over the course of the last few years, and I'm always happy to provide a list of, attorneys. If there's any, environmental concerns, I have contacts for environmental companies, engineering companies, and really just a variety of different contractors, etc. So putting them in contact with those individuals who are going to best be able to help them as it pertains to getting them operational within the space. And then finally, once they fully execute their lease, and they go about the process of fulfilling their lease obligation and utilizing the space to grow their business, follow up with them periodically, see how their space needs are evolving, if there's any changes within their business model. Maybe they're growing rapidly and they realize that they need to move into a new location, or maybe they want to sublease their location. Again, you won't know that unless you continually follow up and see how they're doing and really just build a relationship with them. Because again, this is a relationship business. Brokerage is, especially commercial brokerage, if you foster relationships over a period of time, these clients are going to be your clients for the rest of your life. So again, just follow up and continue to engage with them on a regular basis to see how their needs evolve is really the way that you can continue to build a book of business that will be successful long term. So hopefully you gain some value from this video. I really appreciate all the support you guys are giving me. If you haven't already, we would greatly appreciate if you can like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can hear this message and learn about the many facets of commercial real estate. Along with that, if you're in the Louisville area and you're looking to lease commercial space, again, feel free to give me a call. I'm a commercial agent in town. I'd be happy to help you identify a great location for your business. You can reach out to me via my contact information at 502-536-7315, or you can reach me via email at raphael@crisantigroup.com. Thank you again so much for your support, and we'll see you all next time.